I had owned this property for years, and the wetlands behind my house were protected by law. I kept every environmental document, survey, and permit safely in my files. Then one morning, I heard heavy machines. I had no idea the HOA was about to make a very expensive mistake. Rachel Vance, the HOA president, walked onto my property with a crew of workers. She pointed toward the wetlands to build a new tennis court. I immediately told her that land was protected and construction was forbidden. She simply smiled and said, "The HOA already approved it." I asked Rachel to show me the environmental approval for the whole project. She handed me an HOA construction document, as if it ended the conversation, but there was no environmental permit anywhere in those papers. That was when I realized they had no idea what they were doing at all. The next morning, heavy machines arrived before sunrise. Excavators tore through grass while workers began preparing the ground for asphalt. I stood there watching a protected ecosystem disappear in front of me. Rachel acted like nothing unusual was happening on site. Within hours, the peaceful wetlands looked completely different. Natural vegetation had been ripped out and enormous piles of dirt covered the entire ground. The HOA was preparing a massive paved surface where wildlife had lived for years. I knew I needed to document everything before it was too late. I photographed every machine and every section of damaged wetland. I saved copies of original property surveys and environmental records. I documented the exact locations where construction crews crossed the protected boundary. I was not seeking revenge. I was building evidence. Rachel saw me taking pictures and started laughing. She told me I was wasting my time because the HOA had already approved everything. I asked her one last time to stop construction until the permits were verified. She refused. That evening, I filed a formal environmental complaint. One attached the photographs, property surveys, and every document I had collected. I did not know how quickly state authorities would respond. But the next morning, I received a call that changed everything. An environmental investigator had received my official complaint. He told me the photographs clearly showed serious potential legal violations. More importantly, he said an inspection team was already being dispatched. For the first time, I knew the HOA was not going to control the story anymore. Inspectors arrived before the HOA could finish building. Inspector Simon Cole stepped out, examined the property boundary, and immediately started taking detailed notes. Construction crews suddenly stopped working. Rachel's confident smile disappeared when she saw him. I stood at the edge of my wetlands and watched them near completion. The HOA president insisted they had every right to build it. But I held environmental records proving otherwise, knowing consequences were near. I handed the inspector every document I had collected carefully. The protected boundary was clearly marked on the original survey map. The tennis court had been built directly across that protected environmental area. The inspector's expression changed the moment he saw the map. They measured the property line again and again on site. Every single measurement placed the new tennis court directly inside the protected wetland zone. The HOA president kept insisting there had been a mistake made, but the numbers were impossible to argue with. Then the state enforcement officer handed the HOA president an official stop work order on the spot. The heavy machinery went silent almost instantly. For the first time, she stopped yelling at me in anger. She finally realized this was no longer a simple HOA dispute, but a major state environmental violation. The HOA board held an emergency meeting that same afternoon. Their legal bills were already climbing rapidly by the hour. They wanted to blame the contractor, the surveyor, and even me for their own reckless choices. But official records showed exactly who approved the project. Investigators documented everything they destroyed on site. Native plants, drainage channels, and natural water flow had all been severely damaged. This was not just a slab of concrete anymore. It had become key evidence. When the case reached court, the HOA tried one final argument, claiming they believed the land was suitable for community development. My attorney placed the original protected wetland survey on the evidence table. Their entire argument collapsed in seconds before the judge. The final ruling from the court was completely devastating for the HOA. They were ordered to restore the protected wetlands and pay a massive penalty. The final fine reached $500,000. And that was before any of the extensive environmental restoration costs were even added to total. Then came the part they never expected. The tennis court had to be completely removed from the site. Piece by piece, heavy machines tore up the paved surface they had proudly built over the protected wetlands. The protected land was finally being restored properly. Months later, the wetlands looked better than they had in years. The HOA had lost in court, surrendered a fortune, and destroyed its remaining credibility. I never wanted their $500,000 penalty. I just wanted them to understand, once and for all, that my protected land was never theirs to destroy, and that true environmental justice will always prevail in the end.